Thank you for organizing this conference and for inviting me to speak on the topic of the Štokavian dialect area in Montenegro. I am not going too much into details about dialectal features and about social or political issues, but I'm going to try to explain some of the background that is important to explain the settings of the language situation in Montenegro in the context of the Štokavian and South Slavonic context. So the reason for having a closer look at this issue is that the language situation in Montenegro is a very complex issue, and we have very different ideas about linguistic alterity that compete with each other, and there is also a result of this that we have no clear dominance among the population of the glottonym that could be uniformly projected onto the language of Montenegro. So there are several reasons. I would like to spotlight some of them and explain them in the context after the development of the country of Montenegro after 1991. And in order to trace these facts, I will also engage some typological overlaps of the successor languages of the former Serbo-Croatian and talk about the related problem of ambiguous linguistic classification. So we have to set the first problem in the context of the former Serbo-Croatian language, which, as is well known, was created in the 19th century after numerous reforms, and it was drafted based on the Štokavian dialect continuum with its modern accents. So the name of Serbo-Croatian remained until the disintegration of the Yugoslav state. So we have a long tradition of using this term, and I would even say that abroad, so that means not inside Yugoslavia, but abroad, this notification of Serbo-Croatian was even more important than we had it in the country itself. But the point is not a quantitative one, but the issue that the notification of Serbo-Croatian used to exist until the disintegration of the Yugoslav state. And only then it became more relevant to rise standard varieties of Croatian, Bosnian, Serbian, and Montenegrin, even if it's obvious that these terminological features and the identification of the speakers existed long time and centuries before. So here we have only a question of how to highlight the name of the language and how to put it into a legal context. So this is well known. I'm not going to go too much into the details. A lot of literature was done on it, and just to summarize the main features that are important. So as well is known that Štokavian is divided into three major subvarieties, which are Ekavian, Ijekavian, and Ikavian. So, and this classification is in turn referring to the results of the change of the late Common Slavic vowel of yat, as we have, for example, in cases such as reka, rijeka, or rika for the river, or mesto, miesto, and misto for the place, etc. So we have a lot of examples for this. It is well known that the classification is based on this issue, and there, along with this very point is one very important particularity of the language situation in Montenegro, because it is part entirely of the Ijekavian area, with, of course, some regional dialects and exceptions that we can see here on this map. But we can, what is also important to note is that the most important feature for the geographical and geopolitical area and identity of Montenegro is the absolutely predominance of Iekavian, which we can even see on some maps, historical maps, such as this one, where all the other varieties are even excluded. And this is a very typical feature for the situation of the language in Montenegro, because as we can see, all the other varieties and dialects are overlapping the border and are existing in at least several countries and versions. So, for example, we can see that that we have in other regions of the Štokavian dialect area and its modern standard languages, we have at least, for example, Ekavian as the most important norm, but we have also Iekavian in regional use, or Iekavian as the most important in Bosnia and Herzegovina, but at the same time with Ekavian or Iekavian as the most important in Croatia, and Ekavian and Ekavian being in regional use. We can find some examples in several papers, so I'm not going to set all of them. It's visible on the maps that this is one central feature which is distinguishing the language situation in Montenegro from the other successor states of Yugoslavia with the same Štokavian language background. So, and after 1991, in contrast to all other former constituent republics, Montenegro's national identity was also not that pronounced as, say, in Croatia or Serbia. And this is very interesting and can be explained by several features, as, for example, if we are looking at the official statistical data which was collected after 1991, and if we put in this context the question of ethnic affiliations, we can see that the answer of the local population used to be always, since 1991, with very visible majority Montenegrine. So there is absolutely clear evidence that Montenegrine identity has a strong position and up to date has the most important, is the most important player when it comes to ethnic identity in the country. What is interesting is that, for example, if we have a look at the situation of the Serbian population, we can see that in 1991 it was below 10%. So that means that it is a very big shifting in favor of Serbian national identity or ethnic identity, which is growing in the following years. But still, the Montenegrine identity is the most important in the country. So that is one point that is obvious, but the point that is obvious as well is that this ethnic affiliation does not congruent with the language situation, because all the census data we have since 1991, or better even since 2003, are showing some pictures that are not corresponding to the ethnic affiliation. We do not need to include here 1991 census, because then far majority spoke about Serbo-Croatian as its mother tongue, and only after that we see that there is a big shift. So that means that, interestingly, in 2003 we have almost or approximately 60% that name their language Serbian, and then this number is falling in the next two census and now is moving around 40 to 50%, always between these numbers. But the interesting point is that more and more people name their language Montenegrine. And the second point, which is interesting with this overlapping, is if we have a look at the geographical distribution of these both names. So we can see we have ethnic and linguistic identity which has local centers. So we can see that far the most important ethnic affiliation that people name is Montenegrin, which is covering the far most territory of the country of Montenegro. And if we put the question of the language issue, we can see that all of these languages do have some regional centers, but still we can see that most of the regions do not even have a clear majority. So as for example the regions of Nikšić, Danilovgrad or Podgorica, which have only a slight majority of the name of the language in question. So if we now compare the data on the most frequently mentioned mother tongue with the most frequently mentioned ethnicity, we can learn that the respective designations do not harmonize with one another with regard to a Montenegrin option. So, and this is very important and interesting because Serbo-Croatian was the most important name of the language in 1991, as mentioned, and then we can see that this name cannot be followed by Serbian or Croatian, but by Serbian or Montenegrin. That is one very important point. But what does it say about the correlation between ethnicity and linguistic identity? Above all, we can see their direct comparison between the ethnic Montenegrins and ethnic Serbs shows that there are striking differences between these two groups. And namely, while the linguistic self-image of the Serbian population is very much inclusive, and only few Serbs define their language as Montenegrin, the constellation among ethnic Montenegrins is very complex. So we have a ratio following all census data we have, which is about 2:1. They consider Montenegrin and Serbian respectively to be their mother tongues, and we can see this on the slide. So this is the census data and the results of the recent census, where we can see that that only a very few number of people who name a Serbian ethnic affiliation do name Montenegrin as their mother tongue, but with Montenegrins, about 2 Montenegrins from 3 or out of 3 name the language Montenegrin, and 1 says it's Serbian. So this is what we have from data. But of course we have to analyze the reasons for this. Of course, first we have to set it in the historical context. So even I would start from the Ottoman Empire, going on with Yugoslavia and the state union of Serbia and Montenegro, but also social, for example, it's a question of profession, education, or also dialectal particularities and ethnic self-identification. We have also, of course, political reasons for that, for example, some preferences, ideas, and also in the sense of Michel Foucault, it's a discussion that is going around the question of power, interest, but also maybe some other issues can be relevant to this, as well as traditional family, friends, background, etc. But there is also one point that is important, that it is the question of religious affiliation that is in Montenegro not only Christianity but also Islam, and here we can see again a strong disruption with all the other successor states of the language area of the Štokavian speaking region, where it is very clear marked which affiliation in terms of religion do explain the sense of ethnic or linguistic affiliation, and this is something that does not work the same way in Montenegro. More, we have the issue of generations, so personal history and personal identification, and as we also saw on the maps, we have regional or local definitions, etc. So that means to come to the most important findings, we can say that in contrast to all other standard Štokavian languages, the language situation is not characterized by a closed unity, but by an open unity. And this relates primarily to ethnic, linguistic, and religious patterns. So they can overlap and are not separated as they are in other regions of the same language area. The Montenegrin linguistic and ethnic identity is less inclusive than that of the other regions in the same area, and therefore no absolute consensus is required to classify the language of the country, but an open debate that works with diverse terminology. So, and this is my most important finding, and at the end I would like to thank you for your attention.